So it's 10 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is Tonight Live. With me until midnight, my superstar panel, Olivia Utley, assistant comment editor at the Terrible Graph. No, I love it. And comedian Francine Lewis. No, I lie. I do like to read that, actually. Tonight, we want to hear from you throughout the show. You can get in touch via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or why not send us a tweet at gbnews. You can find us on Facebook. Send us a question in there, or why not download our #1 news app. Now, in this part of the show, we'd love to delve deeper into issues that are affecting you. Last week, we covered the cladding crisis, which is an issue that will keep coming back, and we will keep on it. But tonight, we are discussing smart motorways. I mean, you'll struggle to avoid them. There are around about 500 miles of smart motorways in England, and with plans for even more of these things and more miles in the next few years, smart motorways will become a huge thing. Now, smart motorways use a technology-driven approach that increases the capacity or to relieve congestion on the roads. And Highways England make the case that smart motorways reduce traffic and are as safe or safer than conventional motorways. However, the main concern and worry for many drivers is the removal of the hard shoulder. Now, official figures out last month showed that the death rate on smart motorways was up a third compared to conventional motorways. Joining me now to discuss the safety of smart motorways is Neil Gregg. He's the Policy and Research Director of Road Safety Charity, and I am Smart, Road Smart, and also Claire Mercer, who tragically lost her husband in 2009 due to an accident on a smart motorway. I'm going to start with Claire now because she's part of a campaign group against smart motorways. Claire and Neil, thank you both for joining me. So, Claire, my thoughts are with you. I'm so sorry about what happened to your husband. Can you tell us a bit about what happened that evening to your husband, Jason?
It was actually the morning. He was heading to one of the sites that he managed. He got on the motorway in Rotherham and headed towards Sheffield. He had a minor collision with another motorist in the third and fourth lane, I believe it was. They were at a sign that said no hard shoulder for 4 miles. 2 years ago, people knew far less about smart motorways than they do now. And I just honestly don't think they knew what a smart motorway was and what they were meant to do. The sign said no hard shoulder for 4 miles. So as far as they were concerned, there was nowhere to stop for 4 miles, which is utterly ridiculous. And it's your legal obligation to stop from an incident. So they pulled over where they could. What should have been the first lane, the hard shoulder, was actually the first lane, and there was a crash barrier stopping them getting right out of the running lane. They couldn't get over the barrier because there was a 30-foot drop onto the road below. They were just penned in. Whichever way they looked, they were penned in. So they pulled over as far as they could, but they were still obstructing the first lane. They possibly saw the gantries. They possibly knew about the gantries. Most people still today believe that these gantries, the cameras on them, are constantly monitored, when we are now told they're not monitored at all. It's actually been admitted in a coroner's court that they're not monitored at all. So they were trying to sort out the details. They were trying to assess the damage, and a lorry ploughed into them and killed them instantly.
I mean, that's absolutely horrendous. I mean, this is awful. Now, I'm going to ask Neil, if you are stuck on you're stuck on a smart motorway, your car breaks down, what are you supposed to do?
Well, you're supposed to pull over to the left. That is the official advice. That's the campaign that has just been run by Highways England. The problem, of course, is that when smart motorways were first put out there and designed, they were supposed to be smart. They were supposed to detect stopped traffic. They were supposed to set the signs upstream of the traffic to warn other traffic. They were supposed to close the lane. They were supposed to have the CCTV coverage that Claire has mentioned. They were supposed to have these stop vehicle detection systems. But unfortunately, they weren't delivered in that way. And that's something we've been saying for quite some time now. And it's something that Highways England are only now saying they're going to rectify.
Now, I mean, Claire, I want to ask you, so if there were no cameras monitoring this, how soon did somebody get to this incident? How did they know that this had happened? Was it the general public that called in?
My husband was laying dead on the road. When they'd been laying dead on the road for 6 minutes, that is when Highways England became aware, and that was only because members of the public started phoning in. None of the technology we are told is there. It picked them up. Nothing. They were there for 6 or 7 minutes, assessing the damage, looking at what needed doing, trying to work out what to do, and then they were dead on the road. Jason and Alexandru were dead on the road for about 6 more minutes before Highways England were even informed. The Junction 11, the whole motorway of Junction 11 near Luton is closed now and has been closed for hours. Right at this minute, has been closed for hours. Even the rubbish about saving time. We worked it out, and the section where Jason was killed was converted to save the motorist 4 minutes a day. 4 minutes a day on their journey. That's 2 minutes there and 2 minutes back from work. And then you get caught in one incident, and you're stuck. The people, Jason and Alexandra were on the road until the evening. They were killed at 8:15 in the morning, and their bodies were still on the road in the evening. I can't even begin to describe what it's like knowing your world is ruined and his body's still laying there on the road. And the people caught in that were caught for 8-9 hours. That wipes out their 2 minutes for the rest of the year. They do not save time.
So, I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that story. I mean, that is awful. I mean, I can't even begin to think. If my car broke down on a smart motorway, pull over to the left, OK, and then what? How? And if the technology is not there to actually inform people that there is an incident, then I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know. I'd climb on top of my car, jump out. What if it's just not you, not just you in the car as well? I mean, this...
Exactly. We get so many people contacting us. We get parents contacting us saying it's Hobson's choice. Which child do they grab first? We get elderly people telling us they can't dare to travel on them anymore because they can't get over a barrier. We get disabled people saying that they've had to change their jobs. They've had to change this. They've had to stop doing that because they can't get over a barrier. It's just absolutely ludicrous. What was agreed should never have been agreed, but what was delivered wasn't even what was agreed. But we've just had people saying, I've been saying this for 16 years. That's how long smart motorways have been in common use, 16 years. And we didn't know anything about them. And what was delivered was not what was agreed. But people saying, I've been saying that for 16 years. Shout louder, do something different. I've had to hire a digital ad van and parade it around the police headquarters. I've had to demand that certain people, I had to demand an inquest because there wasn't going to be an inquest by default. And, we've had to form a campaign group. I'm trying to understand still 2 years and something like 12 days later how I am going to manage to survive without the man I should have got old with. And I am having to fight a judicial review. I'm having to push the police to investigate corporate manslaughter. We're having to look into disability discrimination claims, age discrimination. I've had to make a list of how many different legal actions I'm taking at the moment because there's that many. And I still don't even understand how I'm going to make it to, the end of this year.
What do you think? I'm going to just stay with Claire on this because I want to know what Claire thinks the government should actually do then.
Flick a switch. That's all they need to do. All this rubbish, insulting lies about it would take 700,000 football pitches. No, it wouldn't. Flick a switch. Turn the red X on over the first lane and flick a switch. Then it's closed. It's the hard shoulder again. It's a high-tech hard shoulder. That's what we need, the controlled motorways. The hard shoulder with all the tech that doesn't even work and isn't monitored. But we need the hard shoulder. And they could do it now. They could do it now. And by 10:10, we'd have the hard shoulder back. We shouldn't have been committing to increasing the motorways 16 years ago. We knew we were in trouble. We knew when I was at school that we were in trouble with the climate. 16 years ago, we shouldn't have been increasing the motorways. After a pandemic that has put most of the world still at home, we certainly shouldn't be doing it.
I mean, you've heard what Claire thinks. She's suggesting that we just stop building these things or turn them into normal motorways with a hard shoulder. I mean, what are the main safety concerns with these smart motorways? I mean, Claire's already pointed quite a few issues out with them, but the main things.
It's incredibly difficult. I mean, the statistics, it's hard for me to give statistics, but to argue against Claire, who has very clearly put a very strong case against these smart motorways, that the Highways England statistics do show that they have saved some journey time. We do have the most congested motorways in Europe. Something needed to be done. And as she says, 16 years ago, this did seem like the right solution. But of course, the reality is that we didn't tell people how to use these smart motorways. We didn't educate people, because we don't educate people how to use motorways. They learn by default. And of course, the trouble is, if you learn by default by breaking down in a live lane on a smart motorway, you really are at risk. You're also at risk on a traditional motorway, and there are still accidents on traditional motorways. And in some areas, and according to the Highways England figures, traditional motorways are more dangerous than these new smart motorways. You know, in theory, it should have been fantastic. We should have had this full coverage. We should have had the speed limit going down when things got busy to even out the traffic. We should have had the CCTV. We should have had the stop vehicle detection, which would have been so much better than the sort of free-for-all we had on traditional motorways. The trouble is, in reality, that's not what was delivered. And that's the problem. We hoped it would be better. We hoped it would deliver congestion and safety benefits. It just hasn't. It has delivered the congestion benefits, but they're not huge. People don't notice them. Quite right with that. But the problem is, Highways England have lost the confidence of highways users. We did a survey of IM Road Smart members, advanced drivers, confident drivers, and 80% of them think they're less safe on a smart motorway. So they really have lost the confidence of drivers on this. And the last thing we want to see is people coming off motorways, which are our safest roads, onto our dual carriageways and single carriageways, which are our least safe roads, because that's going to cause more problems.
But I don't, I mean, I'm listening to this. I can't make the calculation as to how you can say, or they can say, that smart motorways are safer than traditional motorways. It doesn't, to me, that doesn't compute. How are they working that out?
Because that doesn't seem to... challenged in court,
yeah.
The stats don't back that up.
I can't see how they could.
Claim has been, they've had to stop saying it. They've had to stop making these claims, because when they were examined in the minutiae, it's smoke and mirrors, and they're not safer. It's something like, on a conventional motorway, it's one death every 17 miles. And no, one death every 43 miles. On a smart motorway, it's one death every 17 miles. I'm not brilliant at maths, but that's not better.
I want to bring in Olivia and also Francine. Do you avoid smart motorways, or have you even noticed when you're on them? Do you notice when you're on them?
I can't drive.
Well, that's handy.
So that is handy.
But what do you think? So as a non-driver, the concept of the smart motorway, does it fill you with fear?
Well, I mean, before this, that was a fascinating interview. I mean, I'd heard of smart motorways. I thought it was... I'm ashamed to say I really didn't know very much about it at all. I just thought it was clever cameras on the roads which could say when people were in trouble, and there might be a bit of time saving and a bit of money saving. But I had no idea that... I'm useless at driving. I don't really know what a hard shoulder is, but what I think it is you can pull across if you're in danger.
And
the idea that you could be penned in on either side, you can't jump because it's a 30-foot jump on one side. All the lanes going. It sounds like a nightmare. I was watching that and thinking, I never want to learn to drive. It's not only put me off smart motorways, it's put me off driving for life. I don't want to get in a car again.
Well, Francine, you saw that. I mean, have you ever broken down on a motorway at all?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And what about a smart motorway? Have you ever broken down on one of those?
I've got to be honest, like you've never heard of a hard shoulder, I've never heard of smart motorway.
Oh, my goodness.
No, I know. And this is what I was thinking, oh, wow, what have I been on one? Like, what is it? I have broken down a couple of times. And I remember, because everyone does kind of take the mick out of me, because I ended up on the hard shoulder, and I phoned the police because I was screaming. I thought I was going to get killed. And they told me to get out the car and to jump. And I said, no, what if something happens to me when I can't? And I was just in such a bad way. And, you know, it was just the most horrific situation, and it's kind of put me off driving to this particular place again. I just want to say as well, the story is so sad, and I want to send my condolences to Claire, because what a sad story. But I don't know if I've been on a smart motorway. Where are they?
Oh, exactly. I mean, that is the thing. I now, when I get on a motorway, I actually check to see what kind of motorway it is. And I look at them and I think, well, if I can avoid going on a smart motorway, I'll avoid it, because I'm not convinced that this is a good idea. And if people say, oh, we've removed it's all lane runnings and everything is going, I think what they've missed out is the element of panic. Because it's all very well saying, oh, yeah, because there was a TV advert and it just showed somebody breaking down the smart motorway. The car pulled nicely into a lay-by that was near, because they're supposed to be 1.5 miles between. However, the distance was wider. They're supposed to have radar cameras that will sense if anything stops in that lane, so it'll then alert the traffic. But the problem is, it's the 10 seconds before, after your accident, and that camera acknowledging it and sending the information to tell the X, the lane thing, to close the lane. Because there'll be cars in between that X and you, and they're not going to see that. And also then there's the panic. So I'm not convinced that smart motorways at all. I'm going to ask Neil. Neil, do you believe the stats that these things are safer? Do you actually believe that?
Well, I have to take what Highways England are saying at its face value. And if you look back over the 5 years analysis, it does seem to show that the all-lane running is the safest form of motorway. There are still incidents. Traditional motorways were always dangerous places to break down. And the hard shoulder is a very dangerous place to break down on. As soon as you stop on a high-speed motorway, you are at risk. And I think the trouble is we have to be sure that they're actually going to deliver them.
I was going to say, a live lane is probably more dangerous than a hard shoulder, though I hear you. Yes, the hard shoulder is a dangerous place, but surely a live lane is a much more dangerous place than a hard shoulder on a motorway. I mean, if you were to
there are live lanes on a traditional motorway, yes.
Yes, but if I compare...
A motorway is a safe road.
But on a smart motorway, it's all lanes running, so they're all live lanes. So if I'm making the comparison, my comparison is a live lane and a hard shoulder. Which one would you choose to break down on then? A live lane or a hard shoulder?
I wouldn't choose to break down on any.
But if you had the choice,
that if you break down on a motorway, you're instantly at high risk. Well, it depends on the breakdown. I mean, not everyone can get to a hard shoulder. It depends.
Well, just say so with the traditional motorway, because the comparisons that we have are with traditional motorways which have a hard shoulder, so that's a full, resting hard shoulder, and one that has a live lane. As you personally, as a driver, which kind of motorway would you rather break down on? One that has a hard shoulder throughout, or one that's a smart motorway with those things every 1.5 or 4 miles or whatever they are? Which one would you choose?
Knowing what I know now about smart motorways, I would rather break down on a motorway with a hard shoulder, absolutely, because I know that I've got a chance to get somewhere with a degree of safety. But I also know that the longer I stay on that hard shoulder, I think it's about 11 seconds or something like that, 11 minutes, sorry. The longer you stay on a hard shoulder, the more likely you are to be hit by something, even on the hard shoulder. So breaking down on a motorway, any kind of motorway, is very dangerous. But certainly having the hard shoulder gives you a lot more options.
That's interesting, because I suppose the longer you stay on a motorway, the more chance you're going to have an accident. So I don't know whether that... But it's very interesting, Neil. Thank you so much for joining me. Good to talk to you. I'm going to give the final word to Claire. Claire, what would you... I know that you've been going through all sorts of legal things to try and tackle this and change things. What would you like to see ultimately happen? And how can, if anyone wants to get on board your campaign, what do they need to do?
Well, the only thing that we need is the hard shoulder back. We don't need to add this technology. We don't need to adapt that. There is no tweaking. There is no sorting. We just need the hard shoulder back. I don't care if they call it a change in design. I don't care if they put their hands up and admit that they made a massive, expensive, deadly mistake. I don't care if they try and save face. We just need the hard shoulder. But just one thing you were saying about breaking down on a motorway, on these smart motorways. Average response time to get someone out to you when you break down on a smart motorway is 17 minutes, not seconds. It's 17 minutes. That's nearly 20 minutes till someone gets to you. My husband was killed after 6. An 8-year-old boy was killed after less than a minute. Nargis Begum was killed trying to get over the barrier out of the way. This is not just a terrible gathering of circumstances in Jason and Alexandria's case. This is happening every single place. They just put these things all the way through. They don't care if there's no over the barrier. They just say, just get over the barrier. No, a lot of the time there isn't an over the barrier. We just need the hard shoulder back. And we have a lot of people contacting us on our Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, and I don't even really know how to work Instagram, and our website, which is all called Smart Motorways Kill. We get so many people contacting us and sharing information. We've got retired traffic sergeants helping us. We've got control room operators sending us information. Even the software doesn't work. The technology doesn't work because the software doesn't work. You know, these cameras aren't monitored. The SVD isn't fitted. And even though they're going to try and force them to fit it, they're now going to go for even further apart. In the trials that were signed off, they were 600 metres apart. And we're now accepting 1.5 miles as the gold standard. It's just absolutely ludicrous.
Well, listen, Claire, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and Neil as well.